My family is still in Southern California, and when I was in college, I remember the arguments about, or the debates about, building nuclear plants in fault zones like the Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor. It was the big buzzword issue when I was younger. I think that, again, this disaster is an opportunity to learn, a global opportunity, and not just for the U.S., but as we know, in the context of the concern about global climate change, there's been a much greater interest in nuclear power. And I'll link this once again, somewhat selfishly, to the international dimensions. I think that internationally, it's quite important that as new countries begin civilian nuclear programs, especially in East Asia, right? Malaysia is interested in civilian nuclear power. Indonesia is interested in civilian nuclear power. Once again, Japan can play a leadership role in this area. Japan, of course, has tremendous moral authority in nuclear issues because of the disasters of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I think has had a tremendous leadership role in nonproliferation in the post-war period. And so rather than looking inward, which was already a concern that many specialists had about Japan before the earthquake, instead, I think, as part of Japan's new vision for itself, it should once again take a leadership role in organizing international support for standards in nuclear safety and increased efforts at, non-proliferation activities among new civilian nuclear powers that are likely to emerge. And I think the U.S. should be a part of that. And certainly, the U.S. government should be reviewing our own nuclear reactors. Some of them are very similar designs to what the design in Fukushima. So I would like to see that happen, and I'm confident that that will happen to a degree. But I think as citizens, we need to really insist that this is part of a good that can come from this disaster.
I'll just briefly answer the two questions that Andrew didn't answer. One, the question on DPJ failure. I mean, look, any government would have been overwhelmed by the magnitude of this catastrophe, so I don't think we should be looking to score political points. But I think there's probably two areas, one past and one future, where we may see that was the failure. Professor Snaka made I thought, very excellent points about the complexities of how TEPCO had to go about trying to resolve the problem, but the political calculations of the government are different. The government has a responsibility to the citizens, has a responsibility to take control when it looks as though things are not progressing in a way that contributes to public safety. And so I think if there's one current failure for the government, it probably is that it did not get involved earlier in the Fukushima crisis when it was clear that TEPCO did not have a solution. The future potential will be this big question of reconstruction. Does the government do it in a way that is politically responsible, politically feasible, realistic, that doesn't bankrupt the country, that adds to the economy as opposed to detract? So I think if it doesn't do that, then I think we'll look back and we'll say, well, the DPJ, fumbled the end game. Let me also mention on the international exchanges, I hate, especially honestly in a venue like this, to give a plug, but I have a book that's just been released on the history of U.S.-Japan cultural exchange, the history of U.S.-Japan cultural relations over the past 200 years. And it talks about this great network that has grown up. It traces this great network that has grown up with student exchanges and artistic exchanges, government exchanges, individual exchanges, and the like, and shows, I think, how it's unique that it has happened between our two countries. And so that's a great question. How will this affect cultural exchange? And I think in the long run, it may benefit, if I can put it that way, cultural exchange, that there will be an interest on the part of not only Americans, but people from other countries to come and see this country that they have now been made aware of in a tragic and terrible way, but in ways that reveal a lot of its strength. And from that, you then are able to enter into, I would argue, a more meaningful encounter with Japanese culture and what makes Japan the country that it is, than potentially through anime and manga, in my own opinion, quite honestly. In the short run, though, I think there's going to be, serious questions about how many students do we send over. They're obviously not going to be going to be up in the Tohoku region. Is it safe? So on and so forth. The electricity issues. But this is actually an area where we talked about should we focus. Obviously, you're going to be rebuilding Tohoku, so should we focus on maybe moving some government functions there, and that's a whole different complex issue. But this could be a wonderful way in which we actually focus some of our exchanges on that region, and we get students and others and artists and other people from our country and other countries with specific skills and intellectual capital to go and help the people recover. So that may be a way to add that's different from monetary and different from just a Habitat for Humanity approach of rebuilding a house.
Okay, thank you. Before giving my answer to some of the questions, I would like to ask Andrew or Michael if you know the best way to send money to the most needed.
Well, I think that the local Japan Society and in the Federation of Japan America Societies has some excellent advice on their website, and many of you might have heard of this event through the Japan Information and Culture Center, and they also give some broad advice. Of course, the American Red Cross is part of the global federation, and so, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with the American Red Cross, but I think that there are a number of other organizations that can do that. Japan also has some unusual tax laws about tax deductibility, and I understand that a few organizations have been able to basically channel money through the few sort of legitimate ways to get tax deductions to donate to the earthquake. There are a few organizations that can provide that, which you could look at through some of the websites that I've just mentioned, the Japan America Society website or the Japanese Embassy website through the Japan Information and Culture Center.
Well, I think I would like to talk a bit on a few questions. The first, lessons for the United States, particularly with respect to potential risk of big earthquake in California. In generally, I can only say that the U.S. should, or the state of California and other Oregon and others might look into the possibilities how best to prepare for a kind of worst case. But this is, I think, intrinsically difficult because in Japan's case, tsunami is an occurrence of once every 30, 40 years. And then, well, we didn't expect this much devastating tsunami. So some specialists indicated that the similar magnitude tsunami took place in the 9th century. And so that's once in a millennium kind of incidence. And in the case of California, I don't know the details of archaeological or seismic exploration there, but it's a sort of a once every other century or something. How to prepare and how to invest in such low probability occurrence, I think, is a challenge. But then I think that I presume that there are certain lessons that the U.S. government, state governments can learn from the experiences that the Japanese had in the East Japan. I don't see apparent egregious failure in the DPJ's responses in the last month or so. The small things, you can point out many things, but fundamentally I don't believe they didn't make really wrong decisions. As Michael indicated, in a way, early responses to this magnitude, it may be difficult to make a wrong decision. But we are fortunate that they may not make a terrible mistake. One small thing about the current problems is the sort of lack of presence of the Prime Minister. To the public views, it seems Prime Minister stayed in his office, concentrating on dealing with all these issues, pressing issues, including the nuclear crisis, without appearing very much on the television or to the public. That created image that somehow the Prime Minister may not have been playing important roles. I think this image is wrong. I think the Prime Minister is serious in making all efforts to do, but there is a sense that the public presence of the Prime Minister is lacking. About international exchange, as a vice president in charge of international affairs of university, I'm in a position to encourage exchanges of students. And then the current challenge, I think, is to restore the level of international exchange that we had before March 11 soon. The Ministry of Education of Japan, in the coming the budget, created the plan project to send 7,000 Japanese students abroad for short visits and invite 7,000 international students to Japan for short visits. Until there emerges certain sense of safety, sense of assurance, it seems hard for us to persuade, for example, American young students to come to Japan for a short visit during this coming summer. The challenge, I think, for us is to create environment where we could normalize the situations. Well, I think the really important thing is to get the nuclear crisis under control. Otherwise, it seems very hard for us responsibly to ask young American people to come to Japan. Well, I don't try to summarize what we discussed. I think our presentations, I hope our presentations are useful for the audience, and I really learned very much from the questions raised by the audience. And finally, I would like to repeat again for the sympathy and support that American friends showed to the Japanese. Thank you very much.